Welcome back to my weekly episode of the layout build. Before we do get started, I want to give a quick shout out to Nicholas from Nicholas Trains. He has an amazing layout and a channel as well, so if you do have some time, you should definitely go check him out and subscribe to him. I'll link him down below. Alright, back to business. Today's video will be all about ballasting the yard. So let's get started. This has been a long time coming and a large part of any layout build. Here's the ballast I'll be using. It's the Woodland Scenics Gray Fine Ballast. I picked it up at my local hobby store where they do have a decent selection. I just went with the one that I thought looked best. So here are the main things I'll be using today. A container, Mod Podge mat, a brush, and a pipette. I got some water in my container and I'm going to pour some glue in. When pouring, I follow the 1 part Mod Podge and 3 parts water method that I learned from Luke Towan here on YouTube. I moved everything on those 2 rows of tracks because this section will be done later on when I have the dirt laid down around it first. Right now, I'll just focus on the main part of the yard. Now, for the switches, when I ballast them, I just make sure to not mess with the mechanism of it. Just make sure that the mechanism moves freely throughout the ballasting process. To start, I'll be using a small cup. I pour right down the middle of the track, and I try not to pour too much. And I also do want to note that I'll be filling those feeder wire holes with tacky glue very shortly. I just forgot to do that beforehand. Okay, this is where the brush comes into play. And you can see that I'm just using it to spread out the ballast. Now I get to filling those holes with tacky glue. If I did have some modeler's clay, I probably would have used that instead. When I finished up with that, I realized that I should have glued the part between the tracks. I just used another brush to paint some Mod Podge throughout the whole section of that area. I do also fill the rest of those feeder wire holes, and now we can continue putting down some ballast. To easily get ballast off the ties, just use your brush and tap the rails. At this point, you do notice that I get out a foam brush just to help flatten things out a little bit easier. Now we continue to process throughout the rest of the yard. Here is the progress. Just about all the yard part of the layout is ballasted, and now we're ready for glue. Up close you can tell that there are still some spots to touch up and apply more ballast. Half the process is done, and now for the other half of it. So if you do have a large amount of ballast to glue like this, I may suggest getting a spray bottle to make things a lot easier. I still haven't gotten one, so the pipette will have to do for now. When gluing, I go from the top to the bottom so the glue flows without dripping down the side of the ballast. I did forget about the isopropyl alcohol, so that's what I'm applying here. This will help keep the ballast in place when I glue it. Now I can continue this long process. It's the next day and I can safely vacuum up all leftover debris. And of course I did have to place the switcher and a couple cars on the yard just to kind of see how it looks. And I do have to say that it looks so much more better with the ballast laid down. There still are a good amount of touch-ups left, which we'll get into right now. For example, here we can see that we have some ballast on the side of the rail that needs to be removed. Same goes for the ballast left on the ties. Once that is all complete, things will look a lot more better. Lastly, I'll be doing some weathering of the track and the ballast with my Tamiya weathering master kit. This is kind of what it looks like at the start. And here's a little bit after applying a few more layers. So far this is all that I'm going to be weathering at this point, purely because I know the engines are going to be parked here most of the time. I will of course weather more down the line, once I think about more where I need to put that weathering stuff. Alright, that is going to be a wrap on episode 10 of building this large layout. The ballasting part was definitely something I was looking forward to getting done, because it is a long and tedious process, especially if you have a large layout that goes, say, around your whole basement. But we did get a lot of it done, especially the large portion of the yard. So before the episode does end, I do want to remind everyone to go check out Nicholas. He does have some good content and an amazing looking layout, and he seems like a pretty cool dude. So on that note, I will catch you guys in next week's episode.